Hello guys, this one's just going to be a voiceover. Also, if I'm a little bit quiet, it is because seniors are currently testing in the room next to me, so I'm going to try to make sure that I'm not disruptive to them. But for today, we are going to be learning about agricultural practices and the impact that they have on the environment. I believe this is a pretty brief slideshow. We'll see, we're going to talk through it. So yeah, let's just dive in then, I suppose. Some of the different impacts, and these are all the negative impacts of agricultural practices, are going to be things like habitat destruction. That one's probably pretty obvious. Eutrophication, nutrient depletion, erosion, and excess costs. So in this slideshow, we're going to go into detail about all 5 of those, starting with habitat destruction. And it just says that displaced herbivores feed off crops. So it's a little bit dramatic over here, but it says, before you complain about me being a nuisance, remember that you destroyed my habitat to build your own. So we complain about rabbits and deer and things like that getting into our gardens, but on the flip side, they would have been foraging in that same land before humans cleared that area for their own use, right? So the more land that we're using for agriculture, especially large-scale agriculture, the more land is being taken away from the animals and especially herbivores that live there. So eutrophication, you've probably heard me discuss this a little bit. I know it came up in the lecture you guys are going over before this one. But to break it down even further, eutrophication is when chemicals leach into the soil and into the groundwater. Rain ends up washing them into streams and rivers. The nutrients in those chemicals, specifically, generally we talk about eutrophication when we're talking about fertilizers that are leaching, so things like phosphates and nitrogen end up in the water system, and they stimulate algal bloom. So that's just when algae grows like crazy, like tons and tons of algae. And so that algae grows like really, really quick. And then the decomposition of that algae, once it starts to die, leads to hypoxia, too much oxygen in the water system, and aquatic organisms tend to die because of that. So they basically choke out everything else. So you can see kind of a graphic just explaining that, how the fertilizers from the industry over here end up with nitrogen and phosphorus. That might be sediment. I don't know what that one's supposed to be. That go into the water. And then hypoxia occurs. So the third impact we're going to talk about is nutrient depletion. I know we talked about this in class the other day. Monoculture, when you're just planting one crop over and over and over again, is not great for the soil, right? I mean, if you've taken a history class where you've discussed the Dust Bowl, then you've probably heard about this before. If you're growing the same single crop over and over again, it's going to deplete the soil of really important nutrients. And then at that point, you have to replace those nutrients artificially with fertilizers. And then those fertilizers lead to eutrophication. So it's kind of a pretty negative cycle that ends up happening there. In a perfect world, people who run large-scale agriculture industries would allow that soil, allow that land to regain nutrients naturally over time, or by planting rotating crops so that the soil is able to regenerate as it needs to. But if they don't, so if they don't do this, if they don't replace those nutrients, then you're going to end up with really barren fields like this. You can see there's almost no green there. That soil is just about shot, right? There's not much going on there. But because of that, erosion can completely take the dirt away. So dirt starts to wash away. And not only that, when that erosion happens, it can result in large amounts of sediment of dirt being put into local waterways. And you might be surprised to know that sediment is actually the number one pollutant in our waterways. And then I think this is the last one, is excess costs. So commercial seeds, fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides are all very expensive. So generally farming is a very, very expensive industry because they're having to purchase these things that might not have been necessary before the Green Revolution, right? They didn't need fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides, but then they learned that using those things would really increase their yields. So now they're using those, and those costs in farming are going way, way, way up. So that's what we've got for today. Hopefully you were following along with your notes on this. And email me if you have any questions. Today's checkpoint question is a math practice one. So it's something that is not necessarily something we've covered in class, but based on what the AP exam expects of you guys, the A+ college ready folks do agree that it's important to make sure we stay up to date on the sort of math expectations that they might have of you on the AP exam in May. So, all right, let me know if you guys have any questions. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Goodbye.